Hello, hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back to OWASP Nova. I'm joined here by Jeevan, who's going to go through threat modeling, but really, really quickly, I just want to announce our next meetup. It will be on Thursday, October 7th at a regular time, 6:30, and it's going to be the MASVS, so the Mobile AppSec Verification Standard, and the presenter will be Brian Reed. So you have that to look forward to in less than a month. So without any further ado, here is Jeevan, who's going to go through threat modeling and improving your own processes.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ben, and thank you for inviting me to OWASP Nova. Always
Pleasure to
love,
have you here.
love having chat with folks from the East Coast and being able to interact with you folks. So what am I selling? I want to talk a little bit about, we always talk about security being everyone's responsibility. And I'm sort of selling a plan to help make it everyone's responsibility and reduce the anxiety and stress for the security team. You know, we have a little bit too much on our plates time to time. So I usually start with a quote, but I felt like I want to be a little bit cheeky today. So this presentation may positively impact your developers' velocity and improve their code quality. So definitely use this information at your own risk. So yeah, I should also mention, I mentioned a little earlier to Ben and Villa that my younger son might just barge in here, so just watch out for that. Yeah, so we'll cover a few topics today. We'll go through threat modeling basics. We'll talk a little bit more about what self-serve threat modeling means to me and how we built this particular program, what are the things, how we built it out, and what we're looking at it for the future. I'm going to do a quick retrospective, some of the wins, and I definitely want to talk about the challenges for doing such a program as well, and some of the next steps for me and maybe the community if they're interested in doing self-serve threat modeling at your own organization. So who am I? I'm Jeevan Singh. I'm a guy that did a ridiculous amount of development earlier in my career, and then I got interested in security. I've done some security stuff now and definitely want to help other people learn more about security. So I help run the OWASP Vancouver chapter. And we recently, it's maybe not that recent, in June, we put on AppSec Pacific Northwest because we want to make sure that we're reaching a lot more folks with respect to security. So one of the things I'm really good at knowing my family because I love to talk about risk. Having said that, I definitely did not predict toilet paper shortages at the beginning of the pandemic. So I definitely have gaps in my skills. So I wanted to sort of start off with talking about threat modeling basics. I don't want to dive too deep into threat modeling in itself, but I want to make sure that we talk about the basics and that we're on the same page with respect to that. And what is threat modeling? So the goal of threat modeling is just to make sure that you know the assets in your system and how are you going to protect it. It should be really, really straightforward. And once you understand the risks, then it's possible for you to think about defending against those risks or threats. And at the very base, threat modeling should be simple, it should be transparent, and it should be democratized. Like everyone should have a voice, and everyone's threat model is a bit different. So that's something that we like to keep in mind at work. So why is threat modeling important? For a variety of reasons. Having security embedded in the design phase, it really helps you shift. Everyone talks about shifting left. It really helps you shift left. You talk about it in the design phase, you get to actually implement controls in the define phase, which is really, really cheap to implement. The more further right you go when you do security or think about security, the more expensive it is to fix. So really embedding it into the design phase is where we want to be doing it. Threat modeling is a great tool for discovering assets in your system. So when you're architecting a solution, you want to make sure that you know what the assets are as part of your system, and you want to make sure you know the ways to make it resilient. So understand how people attack them and how you can make it resilient. It's a great way to prioritize your remediation efforts. And once you've discovered the threats or risks to your system, you want to figure out how you want to actually address those threats and risks. So maybe you can use existing design patterns to resolve some problems, or you might find ways to reduce the attack surface. But it's not necessarily, you don't need to fix all of the things either, but you can prioritize what you think is important to the business. It's a great way to actually document your threats, mitigations, and assumptions. And personally, as a developer, I really hated all the documentation I had to write. But as a security professional, I really, really enjoy documentation. So having a great paper trail of threats is fantastic. And when I joined Segment, the current company that I'm at, I had a great amount of documentation and threat models that I was able to look at, and it really allowed me to peek around and sort of better understand how we think about threats and security and our security posture here at Segment. Also, threat models go stale. So having documentation around threat models means that you can look at them in the future and sort of figure out if those assumptions that you made in the past are still valid assumptions. So making sure that things are documented is fantastic. It's a great tool for security researchers. So what we've started to do in some of our pen testing assessments is that we've shared some of our threat models, and we want to make sure that our pen testing partners, they're aware of how we think about security, and we made a bunch of assumptions. We want them to validate those assumptions. And if we made poor assumptions, we get the results right back, so we can actually iterate on it and fix the things that need to be fixed. So these are some of the reasons why threat modeling are important. And I want to move ahead so that now that we're sort of on the same page with respect to threat modeling, what is self-serve threat modeling? What is engineering-led threat modeling? We know that threat modeling is hard, but is there a way to make it easier? So again, this is just one flavor of how to do self-serve threat modeling. I know that there are a few other companies that are sort of building out their programs and looking at it differently. So this is one way of actually looking at it. So before we even get into it, I always like to talk about what are the problems that we're trying to resolve. So in traditional companies, in most companies, threat modeling is just hard to scale. There are usually only a few folks that actually know how to threat model well in a company. Those folks are usually busy. It's really hard to get time on their plates to actually do a threat model. So it ends up being really, really difficult to scale with respect to that. Development gets blocked by security quite often. So those people are super, super busy. So either security kills themselves by threat modeling everything, which is not realistic and not a good strategy to do, or development gets blocked and waits for the security team when they're available. Again, that's not ideal as well, because if they get blocked for too long, development is just going to move ahead without consulting security. So either you kill yourself or you have people not listening to you and just moving ahead. So both of those are not great options with blocking development. And I feel that AppSec should focus on the most important risks and tasks within the organization. So not all threat models are the same. There are some threat models that make sense that you need to be a part of. If you're working on a payment processor, if you're working on authorization, if there is PHI in your system, you want to make sure that you're involved with those conversations and know how data is handled or payment details are handled. You want to be a part of that. But in other scenarios, maybe you have a very limited internal use tool, and it doesn't really make sense that you threat model it. So you want to be able to be focusing your efforts on the most important task. But in a utopian world, you still want those other items, even though it's an internal tool that doesn't see much light of day, you still want that to be threat modeled. So this is where we want to move ahead with threat modeling. So what is self-serve threat modeling? In this self-serve threat modeling world, in this utopian world, developers are going to do the vast majority of threat models without security even being involved in the process, which means that they're going to be able to identify the assets, understand the scope, and figure out all of the risks associated to those assets. It'll be their responsibility to figure out where are those risks in their system and to figure out which ones are important and critical to remediate in the system. Security should really be focusing on engineering to make sure that we train them and get them better at threat modeling. So our role should be making sure that every year we have new improved training that should be rolled out. New employees should get all of these trainings. Old employees should get new trainings. But and even in the threat modeling sessions that you'll still be a part of, you can use that as a training opportunity as well. You want to make sure that you are coaching engineers how to find vulnerabilities. So you don't want to outright just tell them unless you absolutely have to, but you want to say, hey, have you considered looking at it from this perspective? Have you thought about this sort of attack? What are some of the other mitigations that we should put in place? We definitely want to be coaching them at any opportunity that we have. Self-serve means it's a great way for the team to scale with the organization. So in an organization, in a hyper-growth organization, you're going to have places where the ratios are really, really bad of security engineers to engineering. But in the self-serve threat modeling world, your goal is just to make sure that you train everyone. So everyone actually knows how to do threat modeling. So it doesn't matter if you have 100 engineers or you have 10,000 engineers. If everyone knows how to do threat modeling, it's going to scale well with the organization. Your security team, the team is an extended team. Everyone's part of your security team. It's going to scale well with the organization. So for us, my goal with our program is to make a bunch of mini security engineers. So having an army of mini security engineers within your organization just sort of makes things a lot better. So your engineering team will be much, much better at finding bad things in their systems. And after they find them, they'll be empowered to actually fix those bad things. They would want to fix those bad things. So you want to make sure that you provide them a mechanism in order to do that. You found it, you own it, sort of situation. So does that mean that we go on vacation? Unfortunately, no. Security does not go on vacation. So it's just not vacation time just yet. So self-serve threat modeling doesn't mean that security no longer is involved with the threat modeling process. It's a program where you can actually focus on your highest priority efforts. So again, we talked a little bit about threat modeling an internal tool versus maybe authorization or authentication or anything that has PHI. I want to make sure that if I only have time to threat model 5 things in this particular time period in your sprint, I'm going to focus my efforts on the highest priority things. So I'm still involved as part of the threat modeling process. Self-serve threat modeling is not an excuse to blame developers if they missed anything. We are not going to point fingers at developers. It's not their fault that they miss a risk. It's the program is a team effort, and we want to find out ways that we can coach individuals to make them better at discovering things. Now, I should also point out this doesn't mean that security is out of a job. We all know that if one of our responsibilities are taken care of by someone else, there will be at least 2 that will replace them. So it's sort of like a hydra there. And we want to make sure that we don't substitute other. This doesn't substitute self-serve threat modeling. Does not substitute other important security items. So everyone being able to threat model is great, but you still need to make sure that you're doing all the other things to make sure that you have a strong security posture. Your security tooling, your pen testing, the metrics, all of that sort of stuff is still going to be part of your responsibilities. So now that we have a good idea of what self-serve threat modeling is, why don't we just do a deep dive into the program and sort of talk about how things have been set up at Segment. So before we could do anything, we have to get the buy-in from the right stakeholders. So we definitely got all of the exec and engineering leadership to buy into the program. Now, it wasn't too bad. I'm going to be honest. Segment has a really strong exec and engineering leadership that really have bought into security. So it wasn't that bad to convince them. But we talked about some of the benefits of what we thought were going to be benefits if we were to implement this program. So And we also talked about the minimal amount of time that engineering required to be onboarded into this program. So I'll talk about what I mean about the training time in the next few slides. So when we approach the phases, we thought about 4 different phases that we are going to have. So the training phase, which is pretty straightforward. We want to make sure that the engineers are trained to do threat modeling. Then we had observation. So in my world, I really think observation is training phase 2. We would be watching, we'd be in the meetings where they're doing threat modeling, and we'd be coaching them and making sure that they are discovering all the important things. Review phase, okay, if I'm being honest, I think there's only 2 real phases. It's training and security optional phase. So review phase is just another version of training. So the review phase is when the development teams are doing the threat models on their own, but we're going to review the artifacts just to make sure that they haven't missed anything. And if they have, we'll just reach out to them and just talk a little bit more about how to approach some of these systems. And the last one is security optional phase, which is actually security is optional, and we don't have to actually review anything, none of the artifacts. So let me dive deeper and actually talk a little bit about all these individual phases at a higher level. So with respect to training, most engineers don't know how to do threat modeling. We have security people that do it. So what we decided is that we really needed to help ensure that everyone, all the engineers, actually know how to do threat modeling. And we had a couple of principles in which we want to apply that. So we want to enhance engineering's motivation to learn. So I'm not too sure if everyone's the same way as me, but I tend to learn a lot when the material is fun and engaging. So you want to make sure that the engineers want to learn. You want them to want to do more of the training sessions. So we made the training sessions really, really interactive. I had a ton of questions for the groups. We kept the groups small so that they're comfortable with getting involved and not being afraid to speak. Me being me, I love picking on random people as well. So I told that in one group, and one of my coworkers held his pee because he was afraid that he was going to get picked on. So I definitely want to make sure that we're engaging and interactive and making it really, really fun. We also learned that security is a marathon and not a sprint. So we don't have to do all the trainings in one go. In my vision of Selfserve threat modeling, it was going to be a multi-year program. And I didn't have to do all the training in one sitting. If anyone's like me, going through some of the security trainings that have been a part of 2-day, 4-day trainings, they're sending a lot of information to me at one time. I might retain maybe 15, 30 minutes of that information before it starts going through one ear and out the other. So I want to make sure that I set up the training so that it was easy for everyone to understand. So we broke it out in a big time period so that we kept on going through the trainings so that they better understood what threat modeling is. And we want to teach engineers things that are relevant to our business. So we did the threat modeling training in the same vein as how we do threat modeling within our organization. So just in general, if you do risk assessments, train engineers how to do risk assessments. If you do stride, train engineers how to do stride. So that's what we did. We made sure that we incorporated threat modeling workflows into the training so they really understood how we did it. We wanted people to know how we think about risks and how do we come up with these vulnerabilities when we go through these sessions. So again, the goal of training is actually to teach people and make sure that they can retain the most information. So we had 3 trainings, and we set up the trainings over a 6-week period. And we want to make sure that the sessions were short enough that they would retain information. So first couple of trainings were an hour and a half. First one, we introduced them to the concept of threat modeling. The second one, we actually did some hands-on practice of threat modeling. And the third one was we actually threat modeled a piece of application that they own, that they were working on. So they got their hands super dirty here. And again, training folks this way made it really easy for them to retain that information and get something out of the sessions. So again, it's 5 hours of training over a 6-week period. not very much effort on the engineering side. It was easy to sell to engineering leadership. The training itself is all open source and available. We will, at the end of the presentation, I have some links for you that you guys can just take that down. So a few takeaways. For me, it took me years to get good at threat modeling. So I want to make sure that even though they learned how I learned, but I didn't want the training to end at this point. You need to apply your training in order to be good at it. You want to make sure that you bring the training to them, make it easy and digestible. We also tried different concepts. So when we started talking about threat modeling, we talked about everyday things that we threat model. So everyone actually threat models. That's the funny thing. And we told them that. So one of the first examples that we talked about is we asked the folks that want you consider how you were doing grocery shopping before COVID and now with COVID. What has changed? And the point of it was just to make sure that they're talking and thinking about risks. So bringing it to their world made it a lot more real. After that, we talked a little bit about, there was a housing example. We showed them a house and we talked about what are your threats, concerns, risks when looking at this picture. And again, it was just to make things more real. And then we slowly transitioned from the physical realm into the software realm. And we showed them how similar all of them were. You have to fail fast. I'm going to repeat myself a few times about failing fast. When I was building out the training, it took me a few weeks to build out the first training. And then I was considering iterating a few more times on the training before I gave it to anyone. And my boss, smart man that he is like, hey, just get into someone's hands and iterate from that. And I had to learn how to fail fast. I've done that concept a lot in my career, but it was a little bit harder with workshops because I always want to deliver the best that I can. So I was able to fail fast. I made the security team dog food it. All the security team went through it, got lots of great feedback on how to redo that training. I iterated, found a beta engineering team to test it on, got some really, really good feedback from them. They think a little bit differently from the security folks. And I iterated one more time and I delivered it to another engineering beta team, which I got very few comments. So it was already about 95, 98% of the way there. So make sure you fail fast and make sure you test it out. Get your feedback and iterate as soon as you can. So one little tidbit, I always want to make sure that everyone's engaged. I want to make sure, so I ask people to leave their video on. And again, I mentioned that I've always asked random people questions so that I can keep them on their toes and they're paying attention. So we had, like, again, when you have really, really strong training and it's engaging, people are going to enjoy it. So we got some really, really good reviews about the training itself. So nothing can replace good training. And then this is the most fundamental part of your self-serve threat modeling program is that training. Okay. I should also point out, feel free to ask questions. If you have anything that you want to answer, I can answer it throughout, or I can always answer after the fact as well. Okay, so after the training phase is the observation phase, where basically security is actually within the threat modeling sessions, but we're coaching people. So at Segment, I say we're here-ish right now, because part of it, we're still in the training phase because we hired a bunch of new folks, so we want to train them up. And vast majority of the folks are in the observation phase, but there are some teams that are ready to go to that next phase, which we'll talk about after the review phase. So basically, in the observation phase, we hand off a lot of the duties to the engineering team. So they're responsible for actually providing all the documents. There'll be a DRI, the directly responsible individual. They're the one that will get all the documentation and prepare for the threat modeling. They will actually lead the threat modeling session themselves. And the security team is sort of involved. We listen in, we add our comments. We want to coach people to find vulnerabilities. So again, the goal is to train them more. They've moved from their theory in the training phase to the practical. They're actually apprenticeship. They're learning how to get their hands dirty with this threat modeling stuff. So again, the goal of this phase is to get engineering good enough to threat model on their own. And we want to work with them with finding vulnerabilities, give them hints, coach them. We also want to make sure that we work with them to understand how they can prioritize the vulnerabilities, which ones they should remediate, which ones we can push off remediation. And we want to make sure that they leave every single threat model feeling that they learned something new. So once you start seeing them finding all the critical and high priority vulnerabilities, then you know that they're ready to move to the next stage. So a couple of key things, key takeaways as part of it is that, again, feel free to work with engineers to prepare the document, but after you've done that a few times, let them take over and do it for themselves. Threat modeling is a team sport. Make sure you have enough people in the conversation and there's enough diverse opinions there too. Whenever I run threat models, I'll either DM people that haven't been talking enough, because everyone's voice counts. Like, I think about threat modeling very differently than other people. So I always like to call people out. But more importantly, I like to call the directly responsible individual for the threat model. I like to coach them to call other people out as part of the conversations. Again, more conversations, the better it is. It's always good to close the loop with the engineering team afterwards. Let them know that they did a great job. So some people are just natural at it. So I remember the very first time we did this, me and a coworker, we had one of the engineers prepare the documentation. We all got into a room and he talked about all the vulnerabilities that he discovered and how to remediate it. So me and one of my coworkers, we didn't provide any additional value as part of that threat model. And the engineer discovered everything. I was super, super proud of him, but that was a really, really hard on my ego because I felt I wasn't relevant that long. I was hoping that I'd be relevant for a little bit longer, but some of these folks are so good. So I'm glad that the engineer made me feel that I was replaceable. Here's one of the good conversations that we had. This particular individual that actually led it, he led it another threat modeling session earlier this week on Tuesday. And again, ridiculous amount. He did so well at threat modeling that I'm pretty sure the next time he has a design review ticket that he sends to us, I'm just going to make him run the threat modeling himself, and we'll just review the artifacts because he's so good at it. Okay, the review phase is the next part where, again, security is not actively involved in this process. You let the engineering team to do all of the heavy lifting. They'll set up the threat model. They'll do the documentation. They'll actually do the threat modeling themselves. They'll prioritize all the threats, and they'll figure out which ones they want to remediate. And as part of it, once that they're done, they'll just let us know, and we'll just have a quick peek, make sure that they caught all the really critical and high priority vulnerabilities, and that is it. And if they're missing things, that's okay. You can observe, jump in a few threat modeling sessions with them, observe, coach them up. But at this point, they should be really, really good at it. They should be able to find 90% of the issues. And yeah, they should be pros at this point. So I'm hoping next year, when I give this talk again, I can provide a lot of more pros and cons about the review phase. And utopia. So this is where we want to be. We want to make sure that security is optional. So everything now should be threat modeled because you've made it such that there have many security engineers throughout the organization. So any new features that you built, they should be able to threat model because they understand how to threat model because they went through the training. They went through apprenticeship because you sat and taught them how to think about threat models, threat modeling and vulnerabilities and risks in real threat modeling sessions. You've been reviewing their threat models because you don't have to be in the room. You started reviewing the artifacts from the threat modeling sessions, and now they're here where they can do it themselves. So we should hopefully at this stage see a drop in vulnerabilities discovered by third parties, either pen test or bug bounties. You would assume so because they should be catching all the critical, high, and probably medium vulnerabilities at this point. And hopefully you have a stronger bug bounty program. Now you can incentivize people a lot more, pay more out for those security researchers. So this is the security utopia that we all dream about. So security should truly be optional in this phase. And at that point, we get to make that choice. We get to see the design ticket and say, okay, you know what? This is related to authorization or PHI or payments, and I want to be involved. So you can actually, instead of doing all of the threat models, you can actually pick and choose what's important. And at that point, you can kick up your feet for reals and you can go on vacation. Well, vacation from threat modeling. You still have all of your regular things that you got to deal with. Okay, so what are some of the learnings that we have had in this program? There's a lot of things that we've learned along the way. So we've been about, I'd say a little bit, we're more than a year, maybe a year and a quarter into this program. And there's a lot of great things that we've sort of learned. So we're threat modeling a lot more than we have in the past. I feel that the concept of threat modeling is now anyone on the engineering team, they feel it's in reach of them. They better understand what it is, what needs to be done. They're not afraid of it. And now that we're like, if it's being done per feature, it's not these big, huge, massive threat models that happens in some organizations. It's not a 4-hour, 6-hour session. It's an hour, hour and a half, and they know it's digestible. So the knowledge gap that we had previously and the fear that people had about threat modeling, it's definitely gone away with this process. Engineers are really good at threat modeling. This is one of the fundamental things that I've learned. They're like, I feel that the average engineer is as good, once they've done the training, as good as threat modeling as an average security engineer. They know their systems in depth. They know all of where the bodies are buried. Whereas we come in, we have to understand their system and sort of figure out what could be problems. They already know the problems. So if we give them a lens on letting them know what are vulnerabilities and what are not, they're going to be way, way better at figuring out what's going to happen. So they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be good enough to find big things. That's what we sort of discovered. You don't have to find all the informational vulnerabilities. That's not going to drastically improve your security posture. We want to make sure that they're discovering the critical and high vulnerabilities, they're remediating them, and they're prioritizing those in those backlog. One of the great things is that our security culture has improved leaps and bounds. Like, there are so many more people that are interested in security. One of the things, like, we make the training so accessible so that people are interested. So I mentioned earlier that I help run OWASP Vancouver. I've had some engineers now start showing up to OWASP Vancouver meetups because they're so much more interested in security. So I feel that they're more interested because they understand security more, and they also are exposed to what security is really like, and it's more interesting to them. So it doesn't matter why security culture has improved. I'm super, super happy that it has, and we have a lot more people that are wanting to engage with us. We talked about failing fast. I will continue hammering on it. So we failed fast on the training. I failed fast on some of these stages. How do we implement it? I failed fast on figuring out how engaged I should have engineering involved in the stages. This is all new for a lot of people. Just try it out, figure out what works, and iterate on what works, figure out what doesn't work, and either avoid it or figure out how you can make it work better. So these are some of the wins, but I definitely want to talk about some of the challenges as a part of this. Yeah.
Sorry, do you mind if I just jump right in? There's a question here.
Yeah.
Sure. So what do you feel is an appropriate reward for developers? What do you feel is an appropriate reward for developers who really pull their weight on these self-service threat models?
Oh, I love that question. So what we've done, we've identified a bunch of security champions, and what we've done with them is we have a couple of different ways of rewarding individuals. One of which is that I've involved them with more. I don't know if I feel it's a reward. It's maybe not a punishment. I involve them with more threat models, but really, really cool threat models. So we had a threat model where we were thinking about, imagine if we onboarded very, very sensitive companies onto our platform and all the baggage that they come with these sensitive companies. Say if it was a political party or if it was a really hated entity. So we're going to have a lot more eyes and ears looking at our systems and wanting to attack it. So I involved all of the people that were highly engaged as part of this process, and they loved it because we had the whole entire security team doing that particular threat model, and we're really iterating fast with all of the concerns. They just love being a part of it. So we get these individuals that are super, super interested, more involved with the security process. We pull the curtain back even more so that they can see what it is like to engage with us. So that's one of the rewards. The other rewards is this has got to be another talk for another day, but we have a security leaderboard, sorry. So anytime an engineer does something really well security-wise, we add points to them. So we have a leaderboard where we, on a weekly basis, we mention the top 10 biggest gainers of points, and then we have an all-time list of top 10 engineering posts that have security points. So these it's sort of like Reddit karma. People really enjoy getting security points. Like I will go through, they will either fix a vulnerability and like, hey, I didn't get my security points. So I will reward them, or they're jumping into our security Slack channel at work and answering questions on our behalf. One of my coolest things was, I think Node or Golang dropped a high vulnerability. And usually the AppSec team were responsible for figuring out how that impacts us and figuring out if we need to remediate it. One of the engineering managers, he's based on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. So once he noticed it, he discovered all the areas that we were impacted and said, these are the teams that should have to fix it. So these security points have really helped ensure that everyone cares a little bit more about security as well. So we have a lot of different ways that people care about security at Segment, but this is another mechanism, a tool that we have in our belt.
And then an additional question, how do you handle different priorities? So for example, the developers and product managers want to promote new features where security might want to focus more on securing those features, or maybe slowing down development cycles.
Yeah, so when I joined Segment, I had assumed that I'm going to have to, as I do when I join any company, I have to help build the culture, convince people that security is important. I was shocked when I came in and I had to do none of that. So we have a great security leadership team. Colleen, our CISO, heads that, and she's done a great job making sure that the execs and engineering leadership really care about security. And our job is to make sure that we work with the individual contributors on our team, make sure that they care about it. So having everyone work together and care about security makes our job easier. So whenever we do have quarterly planning sessions, we make sure that we work closely with the product team, let them know what are our priorities, and make sure that we're working towards them. So there are times where there is some tension, but it's nowhere near as much tension as I have at other companies. So most people are on the ball at Segment with making sure that we have a secure product. I should also add that we don't think of ourselves as a typical SaaS tool. We think of us as infrastructure. So Segment, we get events and we send events. That's one of our products that we do. So we think of ourselves as an infrastructure company. And when someone loses trust in your ability to secure there could be very sensitive information, they are not going to be your customer. So because of that, we have a real strong emphasis on security. So we have a lot of different ways that we make sure that we always have security first, and we think about security as part of a lot of the things that we do.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Those are all the questions, but obviously if you have more questions out there, the audience, if you have more questions out there, just please feel free to throw them in the chat window and we'll answer them as best we can.
Perfect.
So, thanks for the slight pause.
No problems. Yeah, feel free to ask questions. The whole point of this is to us share. And the goal of me actually talking about our program is I'm hoping that other companies do it and you do it differently, and I learn from you and I make my program better. So definitely there's some self-interest in me sharing how we do things. So one of the bigger challenges, I think the biggest challenge, is that this is a multi-year program, and it's a pretty large investment from the security team. So let me say that again. It's a multi-year program. So most people, there are a lot of people they end their careers or end their roles less than multi-years. So again, it's rare for someone to stay for more than 2 years. So you want to make sure that whomever is running the program is there for a longer haul, or that there are a lot of folks that can sort of make this program happen. So this is a huge and key investment from your security team. You want to make sure that there are some sort of continuality as part of the program, and it will last even if someone were to churn. And it makes sense from the engineering and security team to focus on a program like this, but it's really difficult for a single individual to manage it. So if one person does, they need a lot of focus and a lot of drive to actually make it happen. Training is hard for a lot of reasons. So first, you need to really, I find that instructor-led training is the best way of actually doing training. You have conversations with people. You really can answer their questions rather than them watching a video. And because of that, you have to individually talk to all the engineers as part of your team. So have you ever delivered someone else's presentation? I have in my career, and it's really hard. It's really easy for me to deliver my own content because I like content inside and out. But delivering someone else's training is really hard. So because you don't really fully understand the details for it. So when you're making sure that you're training the trainers, you want to give them a bit of autonomy and let them do what they think they need to do with the training. Let them make it their own, so that they have a sense of ownership and understanding of the slides themselves. So training is really hard for that. I did the vast majority of the trainings for the first time we rolled this program out. I think I probably trained 80% of the engineers. The training really got stale for me. So after delivering it for 2.5 quarters, I got really bored with the training. I need variety in my life. So I had to find ways that I can hand this off to other folks so that they can deliver it, so I didn't have to deliver it so often. I still have regular threat modeling problems. So and with this program, it's not going to resolve it. You still need to have a way to organize all your threat models, make sure that your threat models, when they go stale, that you can come back to it and continuously threat model those items. Things go different from a particular system. They may diverge at some point. And these problems don't go away even if you have self-serve threat modeling. So you have to stay vigilant and ensure that you are on top of the whole program. I also want to say Segment has been fairly easy. We have about 170, 180 engineers right now. We're probably going to grow by 25, 30% in the next couple of quarters. So it's still a small amount compared to a lot of organization. How do you scale this program to a company that has several thousand developers? So again, I personally trained 80% of the engineers at Segment, and scaling this program to many thousands of folks, I think I would go crazy if I had to train 80% of the folks at a larger organization. So I definitely don't want to make this a video workshop and have people just watch it. They'll check out. They won't be really engaged with the material. But the good thing is that Segment got acquired by Twilio, and I will be thinking about this. We're integrating the security teams at Segment and Twilio in the near future. So I will definitely be thinking of this problem, and hopefully I can share with you if I have a good solution to this on how to roll it to several thousand people. Last thing I want to bring up, it's really hard to maintain a ratio of people that are trained, because unfortunately, people leave the company. As much as I tell people not to leave, they definitely leave the organization. So you have trained people leave, and you have new people that join that are not trained. So it's really hard to really maintain that good ratio. We have a continuous program where we make sure that we are continuously training people as they come in. So some of these are some of the bigger challenges, but there are lots of different challenges, and you need a lot of focus and determination to roll out a program like this. But these challenges are tiny compared to the wins that you get. Like, this is a no-brainer for an organization like ours. I will do this 100 out of 100 times, just because of all the benefits that we've already seen as part of this program. Okay. Next steps.
So,
yeah.
Interrupting again. Sorry,
Sure.
we got a couple of good questions. Or we got, two really good questions here. So what would you recommend are some good rules for refreshing a threat model? And then what types of changes need to happen to application or infrastructure in order to trigger this?
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest, we haven't done that yet, but we have a lot of thoughts around doing it. One of the things that we want to do is sort of a time-based approach, and we'll probably start it very lax at first. We'll actually, even a step before that, we want to centralize all of our threat models. We are just very distributed with how we do all of our documentation. First thing I want to do is sort of centralize our threat modeling documentation. Then it's easier for us to know when we did the last threat model in that particular area. And then it would be easy for us to determine how often we need to do the threat model itself. When does it go stale for us? And so I would probably start off, like, my goal would be to do a threat model of a particular area about once a year, but I probably wouldn't start it at that aggressive goal. Probably start it at like once every 2 years or once every 2.5 years, depending on how many systems that we have and how often that we do threat modeling. So I would start it at that and then slowly build it up to something, a cadence that I'm more comfortable with. And threat models go stale if a lot of these systems are continuously developed. Some systems aren't. They are in maintenance mode, and that's very different. But a lot of these systems are continuously being developed, adding more features. And the last time you looked at it could be very different from what you see it. So, which is why I definitely want to have a time-based component to it. Having said that, we still continuously review new features that are coming in. So it could be that this particular area, even though the overall threat model, it's been a while since that we looked at it, but all the pieces, the small little features that we've added, we have been looking at it continuously. So it shouldn't be too bad, but I definitely would want to look at it on a time-based approach. Cool. Sorry, Ben, I missed the other question.
Oh, what's the rule for refreshing a threat model? But I feel like
that one, yeah. What was the other one?
What types of changes need to happen to an app or infrastructure in order to trigger this?
Okay. Just in general, we have some guidelines as part of how we trigger our threat modeling workflow. So we just talking a little bit about our SDL, our Security Development Lifecycle. You have a PRD, a product requirement document that the product managers write about just the requirements of the system that needs to be built. We have security reviewing, making sure that we're not doing anything crazy there. But the next part of it is the engineers, they take those PRDs and turn it into a software design document. So within this design document, they have to answer a lot of questions about architecture, cost, what's the benefit, all these sort of things is part of the template that comes with the SDD. What we've done is we've embedded security in the SDD. So there is a section that will let folks know how to engage security to help you threat model the SDD. But we also have a section where we ask a bunch of security questions. Have you significantly changed your your architecture? Are you using crypto? Are you accessing an external entity? Stuff like that. And if we know that they have changed things, then we know that for sure we want to engage. If not, then we'll just review the SDD just to make sure if we want to engage or not. But we also have the threat modeling template right there embedded. And since like this program is newish to a lot of people, we have a fake threat model set up in there. So I'll have an architectural diagram. I'll talk about things that are in scope, not in scope, so that people know how they can fill up that information when they're ready to do that.
Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, next steps. What's threat modeling going to look like in the future? So next steps for me, I want to move the vast majority of Segment to the review phase. A lot of them have been in the observational phase for some time now. And I sort of mentioned that there are some people that are really, really good at threat modeling. So I'm very comfortable with moving those folks into the review phase at this point. But I do want to move the vast majority of folks there. I want to continuously train the trainers. Right now, we sort of split the responsibility of how we train developers. I run training number one. I like to be hands-on. I want to be their first face that they see when they talk about threat modeling. I have another teammate that does training number two, and then have another one that does training number three. But my goal is to at least double or triple the number of trainers that we have internally. And then it makes it just easier. We can do trainings more often. We have more people in front of the engineers. We build more rapport with them. So a lot of good reasons for training the trainers. I sort of mentioned that Twilio and Segment are fully integrating very shortly. So I'm definitely looking forward to how do I scale this program out to, I think 3,000 or 3,500 developers. So I don't think, like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't make sense for me to train everyone or have a few of us train everyone. So I'm very, very excited about just the logistics of it. How can I actually make this happen, and what will happen at a larger scale? I don't want to lose the quality of the training. So it can be a very, very fun problem for me. Lastly, I'm going to definitely continue to let the community know what's going on with the program, because all the good things, all the challenges, I want to make sure that I share. Again, this is in 100% self-interest. The more I share, the more other people will do it. People are a lot smarter than me. You'll find better ways of doing it. And then I'm hoping you can share it back with me so I can improve my program. So those are the next steps for me. What are some next steps for you? So if this seems interesting to you, I've written a blog post about this. So feel free to dive deeper, read the blog post, review the training itself. We've open sourced it. I'm very thankful that Segment is open-minded that way. I would hate for everyone to build out their own training. That just seems really wasteful of energy for me. This is not proprietary information, so I'm glad that we're able to share it. And you should really understand your organization and figuring out how you can modify the training to best suit your needs. So if you have any questions, definitely hit me up, let me know. I want to make sure that like you know that that I'm available to answer anything about this particular program. So a couple of things just to take away from this program. Self-serve threat modeling is a multi-year program, but it doesn't require too much extra engineering time. Just 5 hours for over 6 weeks for training, and maybe a little bit extra time for each threat model that they set up. So definitely use that to sell the program internally. Another thing to keep aware of is like a lot of the actual security training is compressed and sent through a fire hose to users. Take your time. Play the long game. We have the long game. So think about how your engineers will learn the best and go from here. So definitely do it that way. You don't have to do the fire hose approach. You can do a little drip. And don't burn yourself out. The trainings can get pretty boring if you've delivered it 30, 50, 100 times. So make sure you distribute the load amongst your team. So that's one of the key things that I would point out. Okay. Resources, how can you get started? Okay, oh, before that, Twilio and Segment is always hiring. If you like the presentation, we have a ton of security roles open right now. Great culture, great challenges. I don't know if it's a win or a fail, but you might be able to work with me. More likely a fail than a win, but I'm hoping that I learn off of you. So I always have to make that little pitch. But okay, links, the references themselves. So here's a link to the blog, GitHub link for the training PDFs. I have set up an email address if you have any questions, ssTM@segment.com. I should probably put my Twitter link in here. It's Ask Jeevan Singh. Hit me up whatever way. I want to, again, emphasize that we are a community and we all need to work on this together to make our software safer. And we don't need to hide things from each other. So let's share them. Let's get better at doing things. Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any more questions? I've been rambling on for a really long time. I would love to see if you have any more questions.
No, it looks like you have answered them all. I've also posted your. Oh, you did it right there on the last slide too.
Yeah.
But I posted your Twitter handle in the chat window as well.
So
Yeah,
I have a question for you.
Yeah, please.
So is the threat modeling program a component, because I know you had alluded to security champions, right, within the organization. So is the threat modeling more so a component of the larger security champions program, or is it kind of separate in that way?
Yeah, so we don't have an official security champions program at Segment. We're small enough that we can, I think our ratio is, we have cloud security and application security within the security engineering team. We have a ratio of 1 to 12 within the organization, from security engineering to engineering. Like, we literally know everyone within the engineering organization. But having said that, as we merge into Twilio, they have a really robust security champions program. So I definitely see this can be a key part of that program once it's very different when you have like 200 engineers to 3,500 engineers. So we will definitely be leveraging our security champions program as part of this.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to mention to folks, definitely don't be shy. When I was joining security, the community was very, very kind to me. I learned so much off of all of you. I want to make sure that you understand that I do want to pay back that debt I feel that I still owe to the community. So I do love talking. I love talking about my experiences. So if you ever have questions, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on email, hit me up on LinkedIn, whatever ways. I might be a little bit slow. I have a robust family life. My 2 boys take up a lot of time, but I will get back to you. I promise you I will get back to you.
So it looks like we do have one question. For your point award system, how do you come up with the hard number rewards for the different discoveries that were uncovered?
That is fantastic. So we have a bunch of different types of rewards that we do. So if you discovered a vulnerability, you get a certain amount of points. If you create a design review ticket, you get another set of points. If you help someone else. So we have a template for all the type of points. There's like 20 different categories of different rewards or things that you've done to get rewarded that we have. And then we can even override that if we feel that's not enough. So me being me, I tend to just put my finger on the enter button a little bit extra. So I give a few more points to folks. So I'm very, very relaxed on how many points I give out. So, but definitely we have a predefined template with how we have all these points and the different categories in the rewards.
Okay, well, we can hang around for maybe another 30-some seconds, give everyone final chance to ask the questions. But again, if they don't catch you tonight, like you said, feel free to reach out to you via other means.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's one more. Is there a
Perfect.
chance this point award template can be shared, or is this something you can Google, or is that something proprietary?
It should be proprietary. Hit me up. I'm pretty sure I will share with you. Yeah, definitely not proprietary. Reach out to me and I'll definitely share it.
Sounds great.
Yeah. I'm going to make a pitch for OWASP Vancouver. We're living in a virtual world. feel free to hit us up. We have monthly talks about a bunch of different things. Next session is going to be September 16th, a week from now. And the one after that, we're going to do a panel. So feel free to engage with us. We don't have to live in our little worlds. We can join anywhere these days.
Yeah,
Sure.
did you post any of the information about the chapter?
I did not. I totally didn't think about it until now.
No, that's okay. If you if you want, we can in the meetup we can post a follow up. I mean, all OWASP chapters really should be supporting each other and kind of promoting each other. So yeah, absolutely, by all means, we can do that.
Yeah, how do you organize your meetings? I mean, we use Meetup, so how would I be informed of your upcoming meetings?
It's all through Meetup as well. Meetup has been fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So Abdullah, do you want to say any final words or anything?
No, I don't think so. Looking forward to next month, and thank you so much for your talk. This was great. Really, really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, and take care.